Today we're taking a look at the COUGAR Terminator Air, which is an all-mesh ergonomic gaming chair that comes in at $399. Now COUGAR brands this as a gaming chair, and it definitely has the look, but what you're actually getting here is a true ergonomic office chair with some gaming aesthetics layered on top. And I think that this is really interesting because it bridges the gap between the gaming chair world and the ergonomic office chair world. I feel like a lot of gaming brands are starting to realize that the best chair for gaming is actually an ergonomic chair rather than a racing style gaming chair. So we've actually seen a lot of gaming chair brands kind of shift away from the standard racing style gaming chair and move more towards the ergonomic office chair that's kind of skinned to look like a gaming chair. And because of this design shift, you'll actually see a lot of unique features that you don't really see in gaming chairs at this price point. Things like a retractable footrest, a seat pan depth adjustment, and some of the more unique armrests I've come across. But before we get into the review, I just want to mention that this video is sponsored by COUGAR. That said, they have no say in the actual content itself. They are only paying me for my production time and not my opinion. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into the review, starting with the design. Now the first thing you'll notice is obviously going to be that futuristic sci-fi exoskeleton structure on the back of the chair. It's basically just a series of plastic pieces that snap onto the backrest of the frame. And I want to be clear that this is purely for aesthetics. It doesn't actually affect the adjustability or the comfort of the chair in any way. Now in my opinion, this can be a little over the top, and it's definitely not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But I do appreciate them doing something different here. All mesh office chairs tend to kind of look the same after a while, so it's nice to see a chair trying to stand out without sacrificing the actual ergonomics to do it. Now the trade-off here is the versatility. Now this chair is going to look great in a gaming room or a streaming setup, but it's definitely not something that I would bring into a corporate office. So if you need a chair that kind of blends into a professional environment, then this probably isn't the one. But aside from the exoskeleton, the bones of this chair is very much an ergonomic chair. You've got that kind of typical split backrest design, the mesh, the adjustable headrest, and all the stuff that you'd expect from an office chair rather than a racing style seat. So when it comes to materials and build quality, the Terminator Air uses an all mesh design, meaning you get mesh on both the seat and the backrest. The mesh itself is more of a plastic feeling mesh. It has good breathability and elasticity, which is the important part, but it can feel a little bit coarse to the touch and a little scratchy against your bare skin. So if you're someone who tends to wear shorts in the summer or loose woven clothing, it's definitely something worth noting. Now you get a metal base, and the chair is rated for a 265-pound weight capacity. But outside of the base and the mechanism, the construction is mostly plastic for the frame, arms, and the exoskeleton on the back, which is plastic as well. But despite that, the chair feels really solid to sit in. I haven't noticed any creaking or rattling while I'm sitting in it, and everything fits together really well. Overall, the build quality is pretty comparable to most chairs in this price range. It's definitely not high-end by any means, but it's good and it gets the job done. But with that said, now let's get into the actual comfort of the chair, starting with the seat. Now mesh seats can be pretty hard to pull off even for higher end chairs, let alone the budget ones. And I'd say the Terminator Air does a pretty good job here, but still has some of the common issues that most mesh seats have. Starting with what I like, the tension of the mesh is really good. It has solid elasticity, but not pulled so tight that it feels overly firm, which is a real common problem with mesh seats. Now the seat does have pronounced side bolsters similar to something like a Herman Miller Aeron, which can make the chair feel a bit restrictive, especially if you're someone with wider hips. The plastic frame is also pretty much completely exposed, so this isn't going to be a great fit if you tend to sit cross-legged or with one leg tucked under the other. Your feet and ankles will kind of just dig right into the frame. But to be fair, this is pretty common with mesh seats in general. Now the Terminator Air has a foam pad in the front of the seat that's meant to cushion your legs so they don't come into contact with the hard plastic frame. This is a design that you see on a lot of mesh chairs. And the main issue with it is that when you sit in the chair, you kind of sink below that level of that foam pad, which causes a creasing effect. Your legs end up resting on top of that pad, and you can feel it digging into the bottom of your thighs. Now I do feel that creasing effect on the Terminator Air a little bit, but it's nowhere near as bad as other chairs I've tried, like the older Herman Miller Aeron Classic. Two things help here. The pad itself is very soft foam, and there's a deep waterfall front edge that keeps your legs away from the frame. So while I'm not the biggest fan of this foam pad design in the front, it hasn't really been an issue for me. That said, we are seeing a lot of newer mesh chairs move away from that foam pad design entirely, so this is definitely one area where the Terminator Air could be improved. On the positive side, you do get a seat pan depth adjustment, which lets the chair accommodate people of different leg lengths. The adjustment range is really good, and I didn't have any issues with feeling the plastic frame edge at the back of the seat when the seat pan is extended all the way out. This is really nice to see because it's something that's bothered me on a lot of chairs with a seat pan depth adjustment. Overall, it's a pretty comfortable mesh seat. Now it's nothing that's going to wow you, but it does get the job done. Now when it comes to the backrest, it uses a split design with a separate upper backrest section and a lumbar support section. Now this is really common for all mesh ergonomic chairs, but not something that you're going to see in a typical gaming chair. The mesh here also has really good elasticity and is very breathable, so it's a good option if you're someone who tends to run hot. The upper backrest has a wider flare shape that provides really good support for your upper back and shoulders. It also does a good job of keeping you from feeling the hard outer frame edges, which is a common complaint that I have with mesh backrests. You also get a ratcheting back height adjustment system. This kind of does two different things for you. It lets you position the upper backrest so it's actually supporting your shoulders properly based on your height, and it helps you get the lumbar support in the right sweet spot for for your body. Overall, it works really well. It's never gotten stuck on me during normal adjustment, which is more than I can say about a lot of budget chairs with this feature. Now, the lumbar support itself is an adaptive system, meaning it moves with your body as you shift around in the chair. Now, there's no manual depth adjustment for it or anything, but it has this natural give to it that lets it track your movement. Now, it is a pretty pronounced lumbar support, but it stays comfortable because it has a soft, almost bubble-like feel to it. And because it's all mesh construction, it never feels pokey. Now, the one limitation here is that you're not going to get that much flexibility with this backrest since the mesh needs a rigid frame to keep its tension. So that is going to potentially limit your ability to shift and move around in the chair. When it comes to the recline, the Terminator Air reclines from 90 degrees all the way back to 135 degrees, so you're getting a nice deep recline here. Pair that with the retractable footrest, and it's great for lounging when you're done working for the day. The recline action is smooth throughout the entire range, and you've got multiple locking positions so you can stop it wherever you want. Now, in terms of the tilt tension, this is a weight activated mechanism, which means the chair sets the recline tension based on your body weight. There's no manual tension adjustment knob. I find that these weight activated mechanisms are a lot easier for those who aren't used to dialing in an office chair, but the trade-off here is that you give up personal control over the tension. Also, these systems can tend to feel inconsistent across different body types. Now, my kind of subjective test for weight activated mechanisms is whether the chair can hold me in a partial recline. I really like it when a chair can kind of give me that floating feeling while I'm leaning back, while not fully committed to locking the chair. And for me, the Terminator Air does that really well without any adjustment on my end, and it holds even when the footrest is extended. Now, I still prefer manual tilt tension because it gives you kind of situational control, but this implementation works pretty well. Now, one gripe I do have is that when I recline all the way back, the lumbar support section tends to ride up my back a bit, which can feel pretty awkward. But this is pretty typical for split back designs, and it's going to depend a lot on your height. I'm on the shorter side at 5'6", so if you're taller than me, then you might not run into this issue at all. Now, one more thing worth pointing out here, every adjustment on this chair is easy to reach from a normal seated position. The seat slider, the tilt lock, the height lever, none of it requires any reaching around or under anything. Now, that sounds like a pretty small thing, but it's something a lot of chairs get wrong. Now, when it comes to the armrests on the Terminator Air, they're pretty unique. Cougar calls these their 3D hyper rotation design. Now, for starters, you get your standard height and depth adjustments. My one complaint here is that I wish the minimum height went a little bit lower so that you can push them fully under your desk. Though there is a workaround for that, which we'll get into in a second. There's also no width adjustment, which is a bit disappointing. For some people, including myself, the arms may just sit a little bit too far apart, which forces your elbows out. But aside from that, what really makes these armrests stand out is the 225-degree rotation. You can rotate them all the way back and out of the way when you're not using them, which lets you pull right up to your desk without the arms bumping into it. It also solves a problem that comes up a lot with chairs. For most chairs, when you recline, the armrests don't recline back with you, so they end up being in an awkward spot. But rotating these far back enough actually lets you keep using them while you're reclined, which is a pretty clever solution. And because of the angle of the arm pads, when you rotate them all the way around, they end up angled upward. This lets you use them to support your arms when you're on a mobile device or holding a controller. The arm pads themselves have pretty decent softness to them, which matters when you're leaning into them with your elbows. I like the shape of the arm pads too. They're fairly flat on the top so you don't slip off, and they taper off at the edges so you don't have anything sharp digging into the side of your arms. Overall, these are pretty decent armrests. Now, they're not the most adjustable I've seen, but they have a unique way of tackling some practical use cases. And in general, they're just pretty comfortable to use. Now, when it comes to the headrest on the Terminator Air, it's pretty good. It's 3D adjustable with 2 pivot points and a dedicated depth adjustment, and the adjustment ranges are pretty solid. I found that it works well in multiple sitting positions, whether I'm sitting upright or in a reclined position. It's good whether you like it up against the back of your head or supporting the curve of your neck. It uses the same mesh as the backrest, which gives the chair a nice uniform look. It has good elasticity and feels supportive. Now, the one downside to this mesh is that it can feel a little bit scratchy against the back of your neck. It's kind of the similar issue to the seat and the backrest, only the back of your neck is a little bit more sensitive, so you might feel it a bit more. Another thing I like about this headrest though is that it's really wide, so you're not going to feel any of the hard plastic edges when you move your head around. So overall, it's a pretty solid headrest. You get really good adjustability and it's comfortable to use. So now let's talk about value. The COUGAR Terminator Air comes in at $399, and overall, I think it's a decent value, but not amazing. I'd put this in the upper end of budget ergonomic chairs. You're getting good features, good adjustability, and solid comfort overall. But I do think you're paying a little bit extra for the gaming aesthetics, and that's definitely a trade-off that you should be aware of. The materials and build quality are good, but pretty much in line with what you'd find on most chairs in this price point. It's kind of middle of the pack. It's not the best that I've seen, but it's also not the worst. That said, when you factor in that this chair has some design elements that make it genuinely unique, some compromises elsewhere are understandable. But my real issue from a value perspective is the warranty. According to Cougar's website, you only get 1-year warranty. Now, it's very common for gaming brands to only offer 1-year warranty on their chairs, but honestly, that's pretty bad in my opinion. I'd like to see this extended to at least 3 to 5 years to make it competitive with similarly priced ergonomic chairs, especially since this chair is really an ergonomic chair more than it is a gaming chair. The saving grace here is that the materials and build quality here are comparable to most other ergonomic chairs, so I'd expect it to last at least 3 years. And since it's sold on Amazon, you'll have access to Amazon Amazon's return policy if the chair ends up not being right for you. Overall though, I think the Terminator Air is a pretty good chair. All mesh chairs can be really hard to pull off, and this is one of the more comfortable ones I've tried for the price. So if you're looking for something that gives you real ergonomic features without looking like every other mesh office chair out there, then this chair is definitely worth a look. I'll have a link to it down in the description. And if you have any questions about the chair or want to know how it compares to other chairs I've reviewed, feel free to leave me a comment down below.